And we are live. It's your favorite insurance agent, Donald Jr. And
Michelle DeSalle, the Wealth Tattletale.
that's right. Cool. And notice we're in different locations this time. I'm actually in the middle of nowhere, Texas, Falfurrias, Texas. And so, Doctor is holding down H Town.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well.
So
So this
today,
this is
go
great. We can show how fast, how diverse we are, and how we plan to do things. Either way, we're gonna get it done.
That's right. That's right. So today's show, we're gonna. Kathy Mead actually talked about credit scores months ago. If you haven't checked out that video, go ahead and check that out. She has super advanced tips that I highly recommend checking out. But today we're actually going to keep it very high level and talk about credit scores and what goes into a credit score. And so, if this is something that you're interested in improving your credit score, this is definitely the show to watch. So let's go ahead and get lit. All
Well,
right. This is always a fun subject because everybody wants to improve their credit score. Even if you have like a 750, you want to get to 800, right?
all right.
So
And
the
in
thing,
that area, we're always trying to be a high achiever.
absolutely, overachievers. So the thing about credit score, it's a number that is always in the background, whether you realize it or not. Every from the moment we're born, you get your social security number, and boom, you have a credit score. And so if people never use their credit score, then it's really low. But the key is to develop it and really massage it and make it better. And the reason it's so important is because, like, when you go to get a mortgage or get a car payment, the higher credit score you can have, the lower your payment is going to be, and ultimately, the less you're going to pay for those items. Because the thing is, especially like with mortgages, as you probably know, that over time you end up paying 2 to 3 times the value of the house, depending on
Hmm.
your interest rate, which is
Right.
crazy. It blows my mind. So the lower you can keep your credit score, the less you actually pay for the house over the long run, which is great. And
Right.
then also when you're applying for utilities, a lot of times they check your credit score to see how credit worthy you are. And a lot of times, if your credit score is too high, then they'll ask you to put a deposit down on your utilities. And so, to help prevent all that, that's why we're having this discussion today, is to take a really high level. Like, I'm not an expert on credit by any means,
And
neither is
neither
the
am
doctor.
I. I just know how to manage mine. So,
Absolutely. And the reason I want to bring the subject back up is because I was actually having a conversation with a person about a week ago, and she had no idea how credit scores worked, and she didn't even know the basics. I was like, we need to just do a high level overview on the basics as far as how it works. And so
okay,
let's
so
go ahead.
I'm okay. I'm gonna need you to stop using the word high level because then that they may think we're experts at this and we're not.
High level meaning like basic.
Okay, let's say basic. Let's say basic.
Yeah, basic. Okay, that's a good one. So so let's go ahead and dive in. So for the thing about credit scores is there's a lot of different websites where you can actually access your credit score,
Right.
and but there's only one true one, that's your FICO score. And the
Mm-hmm.
FICO score is the one that when you go apply for a car or mortgage, that's the one that matters the most.
Right.
But there's websites out there like creditkarma.com. I highly
Right.
recommend them,
Mm-hmm.
where
I
you
do
can
too.
actually check it daily, and it's not going to influence your score. Because if you check your score, it actually puts a heart inquiry on the score itself, which means it'll lower your score
Lower your score.
temporarily.
Right.
But with time, it loses effect on lowering your score. So, with that, what's been your experience with credit scores? Like, has
Well,
it been a crazy journey or?
well, in different phases of people's lives, these things can, it can be great. Then life can happen. Then your score can be affected. Um, and so that's one of the things that people feel like sometimes, when life happens and, sometimes the score is affected if people have an illness and they may not be able to meet their mortgage or, they lose a job or something like that. It's so many different variables that can affect that credit score, and it all has to do with the journey that we take through life. And so, and I know that that's a lot of people's a story. Hey, it was great; they could get anything they wanted, and then they lost their job. It was great; they could get anything they wanted, and then sickness happened, and or they had to, you know, take on other responsibility, maybe paying their aging parents' bills and things like that. There's so many variables that can happen and that can affect that credit score. But that number, it takes diligence to maintain and to make certain that your credit history, doesn't suffer, when we go through those life challenges. So you're a young guy. So tell me, what did you do to initially start building credit? And I know, we have these stories that we have, when we started to acquire credit. You maybe went to that store when your parents were helping you build your credit, and you buy that one item, and you make certain that you pay it out and everything, and don't miss any payments, so you can start building up your credit score. Everybody has a story like that. What was yours?
Absolutely. So if you haven't checked out my story that we filmed a couple weeks ago, definitely
Yeah.
go check that out. And that was
Right.
kind of the beginning of my credit story journey, actually, because I did have a credit card when I was in college, but I did not use it. And if I used it, I paid it off every month. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the number one tip: is do not carry a balance on your credit card. As tempting as that is, you want to try to pay it off. Like when I was in college, my mentality is if I didn't have it in my checking account, then I wasn't going to put on my credit card. And
Right.
so obviously, like you mentioned, life happens. Like a car might break down, or you might need a tire or two, and it's hard to pay for those out of pocket sometimes. And that's when credit does come in handy. But you want to get it paid off as quickly as possible. So that was kind of my journey. And fortunately, I started off with a really amazing score. I was in the 700s straight out of college, and so that was good. But it went down from there.
And so
Life
and
happens.
so exactly. And so you say pay those credit cards off. Why? Because of the high interest rates that are attached to these cards, right? And imagine swiping a credit card for something as menial as lunch, right? And you think about how many times you'll pay for that lunch if you don't just go ahead and pay that off. Those interest rates,
Hmm,
boy, that would be the expensive burger and fries ever, right?
it really is. Yeah, and that's what I don't think people realize. They're like, okay, yeah, I swiped the card, but they don't realize if they don't pay it off immediately, then
Yeah,
they're gonna have to pay it back with interest, and they end up
yeah.
paying sometimes two, three, four, sometimes 10 times the value of the item that they bought. And
And
that's dangerous.
very dangerous. And when we are getting these credit cards, and when I say we, I don't mean me. I'm talking about, young people with you know excited about, getting their first credit card. They'll start giving them to you fresh out of college, right? But most times you don't have the expertise and the knowledge about how credit works, and that's when you get in so much trouble. And most times when they get those credit cards, they really don't want to share that information with their parents, because the parents are probably going to tell them don't use that card. But it seems like it's so easy. Hey, look, I got power in my hand in this little plastic card, but that'll get you into so much trouble. it,
It
it
really
it's
can.
it's damaging. It's damaging, because those mistakes that you make early on, it's going to affect you when you want to be a homeowner, when you want to, buy your first car, or when you're trying to, you know, save and things like that. Opening up, ruining that credit history, it hinders you in so many aspects of your life.
It really does.
Trying to get bank accounts and all of that kind of thing. It could be a train wreck. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when it comes to credit scores, there's actually five different factors that they take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And the first factor they take in consideration, one of the most important, is your payment history. Your payment
Mm-hmm.
history. You want to make sure you make those payments on time. And I mean, if you're late, maybe a couple days, it's actually not going to affect your credit score. But if you're late 30 days or longer, then that's when it's going to take a huge hit to your credit score. So
Right.
you want to be like diligent in paying it off. Because as far as your credit score factors, it's actually 35% of the actual score is based on your payment history. So the
Hmm.
moment you miss one for 30 days or longer, then it's going to lower your score dramatically. So definitely make your payments on time. And the second factor to a credit score is actually the amounts you owe. So what that means is the goal is to have at least, 30% or less in usage of your credit limit. So what that means is, say you have $1,000 credit limit, the max you want to use is $300 of that credit limit. Because the moment you go over $300 on that credit limit, then it's definitely going to lower your credit score. But ideally, you definitely want to keep it under 10%. Like if you keep it under 10%, you're going to have a rock solid score. And so that's the goal. But obviously, paying it off every month is even the more most ideal situation. But like we know, life happens. Sometimes you have to use it for emergency or two, and so but try to keep it under 30% max, but 10% ideally, right? And so the thing is, say you have $1,000 credit limit, and say you have $500 used on your credit card. So one of the things you could do to help that ratio is if you actually add another card to it. So let's say you add another $1,000 card, it will reduce the actual usage ratio. So you have a $500 in credit card usage, and now you have a $2,000 balance, and so that's what a 25% usage, and so that actually increases your credit score. But one of the things they recommend is not to pull out too many credit cards too quickly, because to the credit bureau that shows, oh, there's something wrong, and so
Right.
we got to put an alert, and it'll lower your credit score if you pull out too many cards too quickly. So they recommend max of doing at least 2 cards 6 months in a 6 month period. So 4 cards a year, max. And so if you go over that, then that's going to alert the credit bureaus that okay, there's something wrong. They're not credit worthy, and so that's all a credit score indicates is how credit worthy you are. And just a side note, in my humble opinion, I think it's all a big scam. The purpose of a good credit score is to get more into debt. It's just like, oh, why is
He told the big
you are
secret. He spilled the beans.
right? Debt free is the way to be, right? But that's not
That part.
reality. Like it's hard in this society to be able to do that. Like nobody has $40,000 sitting around to go buy a new car, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
you have to get a car loan. So that's one of the purposes. So in addition to that, so actually your percentage that you owe versus your credit limit, that's 30% of your score.
Hmm.
So cool. You have a question?
Well, I was trying to, you were at number three, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
number three is the length of credit.
Hmm.
Length of credit. And so this just takes time and patience. Like length of credit isn't going to happen overnight. So
Right.
the people that just started getting credit cards or got their first car or bought their first house, if you have it with less than 5 years, they don't have enough history on you to know if you're going to make your payments on time. And so the longer you keep making the payments, the longer you keep being consistent making those payments, then that's definitely going to help your credit score grow. But it's not one that you could influence overnight. It's just going to be time and patience. But one of the things to keep in mind is a lot of these bureaus, they'll do the averages of when you took out the credit cards or your
Hmm.
mortgage. So for instance, say you got one credit card 10 years ago, but you got another credit card 5 years ago. So they're going to take the average of those when you took it out, so
Hmm.
7.5 years, and that's going to be your average length of credit. So every time you take out a new credit card, guess what? That's going to lower your average of your length
Average.
of credit. And so longevity is where it's at. But once again, it's just going to take time and patience.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so the length of credit is actually 15% of the credit score itself. And so it
Hmm.
doesn't have as big of an influence on it as your payment history. in your amounts owed, but it's still a pretty substantial factor. So, and the fourth one is actually new credit cards when you open new accounts. So when you open new accounts, usually you're going to take a hit on your credit score immediately. But that credit hit isn't going to last forever. Like with time, it's going to wane. And it usually stays on your credit report for 2 years before they actually remove that new credit hit on your credit score. And
Hmm.
so, but with time, like the longer you keep that card or that mortgage or that car note, then it's going to have less of an influence. But they just don't want to see, oh, they need money now. And so they're applying for all these credit cards and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And another note, let's say you're applying for a mortgage, and a wise thing is to shop around to different mortgage companies when you're
Hmm.
applying for a mortgage. But you actually have a 2 week window to actually apply to a whole bunch of different mortgage companies. Same for cars. If you're looking for a car loan, you could shop around, and all those different credit hits that you're going to take isn't going to influence your score as much
Right.
because they know you're shopping around. And so
Exactly.
it's so important to actually do it in that 2 week window, and that way it won't affect your score dramatically when you do go shop for a mortgage or a car note. So super, super important. So, but the new credit is only 10% of the actual credit score, just 10%. So it doesn't have as big of an influence on the score.
Okay. Number five.
Number five, last but not least, is your credit mix. Your credit mix. So if you just have nothing but credit cards, then they actually don't like that. They encourage you to have
It's
credit card,
it's frowned
have mortgage,
upon.
have a loan, yeah, have a student loan. They actually encourage you to have a variety of different credits. So there's what's called revolving credit.
Uh-huh.
Revolving credit is like a credit card where you could go and you could keep using it over and over. And then you have the loans like
Like,
a mortgage where when you pay it down, it's
yeah.
it's done.
Hmm.
But they look at how what type of variety of credit mixes you have, which is incredible because once again, the more the higher your credit score, the more they're trying to get you to go into debt. And they actually put it into the score that you have to have a whole bunch of different types of debts, which blows my mind.
So hence
So,
his statement that he made earlier. You believe that it is what?
yeah, it's
What do you believe it is?
it's a scam. But it is what it is. You gotta just know the system and work the
And
system
we're
the way it
and
is.
and we're all a part of the per se scam, because in order to live life, we have to play by these rules, right? You want to buy a home, you want to save up, you want to pay tuition, you want to buy, it's all these kinds of things that makes us a part of this thing. Unless, I remember years and years ago, I haven't had credit card debt in many, 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 many years, but at one point, I had all of the major credit cards, right? And so I began to, reassess, you know, my spending habits and things like that, and I began to just pay them all off. And so that was one of the things that I said I will never ever fall into this cycle ever again. And so you have that one credit card in case you want to travel or whatever, and then of course with I'm not looking to buy a home. I mean, I've been in, I've owned my home for over 20 something years or whatever. But, there come times when you may, have to have that, credit. But it's a scary cycle. It really is. And I totally, agree. It is a really scary cycle. Um, but it's so necessary. And it's gotten a lot of people in trouble. So I'm going to ask you something.
Sure.
You are you are homeowner now, and you are a young family man, and a good family man he is, y'all. And so the experience of buying your first home, let's talk about that experience when it came to your credit, because now you're, I mean, you're a married man, And I mean, you're buying a home, so you and your spouse are having to come together and do this. Talk about that experience and how, you had to, pull your credit history into that process.
Absolutely. So this is actually my second home purchase. I bought a condo when I was in my
Yes, when you were
20s,
young. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
and so this is number two. So it's nice to go through the process once because the second time wasn't as daunting because you kind of have proper expectations, even
Right.
though things are a lot more stringent now because of what happened back in 2010 with the
Hmm.
whole economy and all the mortgages tanked in 2008. It was bad. So they
Yeah.
put a lot of more structure on it so that people won't give people bad loans. But yeah, they ask for everything except your blood type. When it comes to
Right.
giving a mortgage, they ask for your bank account information. They ask for your social security. They ask for if you have people deposit money, like their background, and it's just crazy. So it's a very stringent process, and a lot of times it's not for the faint of heart, not at all.
Right.
But if
Right.
you really want to get into a house and own your own home, then you'll be willing to give them all the paperwork. And a lot of times they'll ask for paperwork, and then a couple months later they'll ask for the exact same
The
paperwork that you
same
just gave them,
paperwork.
and you just like, I just gave you that paperwork. So they obviously ask for proof of income. They ask for everything under the sun, everything except your blood type,
Except your
literally.
blood type. And
And
you
so,
never know, that may play into it later on. So who knows? You might have
right?
to start doing some.
Don't give them any ideas.
I know, right? And so when you mention all of the things that you have to have in place, and it's almost seemed like, it's an infringement of your privacy, and it's so taxing, and that stress level is so high. But it's important to just kind of, when you mentioned, oh, they're going to ask for this, they're going to ask for that, or whatever. So if you are planning to be a homeowner, it's important to kind of get a sense of organization, right? And knowing what they're going to be asking for. Be mindful of the type of spending that you're going to do, because when they pull these documents and everything, they're looking at how responsible you are with your spending, right? And
Absolutely.
so, and my experience, with, walking through this process with people, it's certain things that they didn't care for the people to look at. Be mindful of how many times you go to the liquor store, okay? And you're swiping your card. That's just not
Right?
cute on a bank statement. And be mindful of what you're ordering on TV.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah,
your personal business is on your bank statement. Am I right?
absolutely.
And in
And
these times, you may have wonderful credit and everything, but do you still want people to know certain things about what you're doing? So you just have to be mindful. And because I've heard some interesting stories from friends, and friends of friends, that when they have to give those statements over and they're looking at them, and you have the fruity tooty store on there.
mhm.
and and all of your liquor store transactions, and all of that kind of thing. So I just kind of just wanted to kind of throw that out there. These people are going to be all up in your business. Y'all be careful of what you're doing out there when you're swiping those cards, okay?
Absolutely. And to that point, like if you are going to make a major purchase, do not use your credit cards. Do not you make a big purchase right before you're about to buy a house, because at
Mm-hmm.
least 6 months before you buy a house, like leave the credit cards alone. Because when they pull your score, they're going to be looking at all that. And if you made a major purchase, like I've literally heard of people losing mortgages or losing that car loan because they made a major purchase right before they were applying for it. And so
Right.
you got to be cognizant of that. That you
Hmm.
don't want to make a major purchase if you're looking at buying a house or a car. So it's so important.
And not only that, you have to be mindful of large purchases. You have to be mindful of, loaning people money. I mean, I had that happen to me many years ago when I was buying a house. A family member was in a financial bind and they needed to borrow money. And I was about to give them this money, and my realtor's like, you cannot. You cannot pull any money out of this account. They're looking at your balances. You cannot pull any money out of the account. And I almost made a huge mistake, a huge mistake. So it's so many things that you have to be so mindful of. Don't loan money, don't make big purchases and things like that. It's a very, very tedious situation. And you just have to sit tight and play it cool until that process is over.
It is, but ultimately, it's worth it,
Yeah.
especially being a homeowner. Like we bought our house in 2019, and we're up like almost $100,000 in equity in just 2 years, a little over 2 years now. So the way, I mean, this market isn't going to be hot forever. Like they're already talking about it's a bubble and it's about the pop. And we definitely need to have a show on that in the future. But right as of right now, they're saying that the supply is so tight and builders are having such a hard time building that there's such a small supply of houses. And if you know anything about economics, it's a supply and demand, and it's just a
Hmm.
natural way the market works. And so the demand is really high and the supply is really low. So that's
Right.
going to keep increasing the value. And I honestly don't think it's a bubble for that very reason. So we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. But it's just basic supply and demand. And so, but it's a very, like they say the average person that rents, their net worth is about $5,000, but the average person that owns a home, their net worth is over $100,000. And so your house plays a valuable asset in that regards.
Yes, and one of my close friends, and we're gonna have to have him on. He's the Texas real estate king, and his colleague Rick was telling me that he was doing these workshops and teaching young adults about this is how you create your wealth. Your home ownership creates wealth. And it's like if you want to be a millionaire, he mentions, and we're gonna have to have him on because these concepts are very, very intriguing and very interesting. And so you're paying this cycle of rent forever, and throwing a lot of money away. But that home ownership, from buying that first home, and then you're able to then capitalize on that first home and that second home and build wealth. And I thought the concepts were just amazing. And but that's the thing. It's one of the biggest things that you'll purchase. And I know, as being in the financial services business, when we do an intake for our clients, that's one of the questions that we're asking. Do you have, or what type of, do you have at least $100,000 of investable assets, right, besides your home? Because that home doesn't play a factor there, because we can't invest with
Right.
your home. But the fact that you have that real estate or whatever, it can be the resolution for so many problems that you have financially, if you are a homeowner. So yes, it is so worth it. It's worth it. I mean, when you get like my age or whatever, which is not old, I want to tell you, okay?
21,
but
21.
but a homeowner, okay, there's so many things that goes into buying a home. And one of the things that I love about being a homeowner, this is crazy, but I love doing yard work, right?
Do you? It makes one of us. I hired somebody for
Listen,
that.
and of course, being a homeowner is for as long as I have. I've had the people that come and do the yard and everything. But I'm a country girl, right? And there's three things that I have to have. I have to have a lawnmower, a weed eater, and a bicycle, right?
That's awesome. You're welcome to
But
come
I
do my
do.
yard if
I
you want
love
to.
I love doing yard work. But I know that once once I get my first cane, I'm not gonna be able to do that or whatever. But
Yeah.
there's so many joys, and to me, okay, that's crazy, but that's one of the joys that I have of being home. I love manicuring my lawn and all of that kind of thing. And so you say you don't like that, but one of the favorite things that you love about being a homeowner, you like entertaining. What do you like doing?
Yeah, I definitely like having people over, but I just love the freedom. So we moved from an apartment to a home, and being in an apartment, like usually you have people above you, beside you, below you, and you can't really turn up your music as loud as you want to. And so the first thing, like I have an amazing surround sound system. The first thing I did when I moved into my house, because we have a big old subwoofer, and I had to turn the subwoofer down just out of respect for our neighbors. But now, since we have
Yeah,
no neighbors, or at least that's attached to our wall, I turned that subwoofer all the way up.
you
And so
get
every time
down.
I play, yes, every time I play the movie, like the whole couch shakes and the windows shake, and I'm just like, yes, finally, the
I
freedom
know.
to do whatever you want to do, and so you have
Well,
a lot more control.
and that's so funny because one of my clients, he was saying that he wanted, when he was going to build his house, he said he wanted to be in a rural area so that he nobody could tell him how loud he could play Eric Clapton. He wanted to just be out shaking the trees because he too had been in an apartment for so long and was so excited about, hey, getting a home built so nobody can tell me how loud I can play my music. So that's really funny. That's really nice. And
So,
so, but having these, experiences and building these memories in these homes, people had to make certain that they were credit worthy enough to get into them. And that is key. And it's and that comes with a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of duty that goes into maintaining, a good credit, and so let's talk about some of the things in life that can um, tarnish that credit history.
mhm.
So
Yeah. So one of the
go
biggest
ahead.
things, like we mentioned earlier, is missing a payment. Do
Hmm.
not, do not, do not miss a payment. Oh, another thing that we haven't talked about is going over your credit limit, and
Ooh,
that's huge. So let's say you have $1,000 credit and you spent $1,200 on that credit card, like that's gonna tank your score
yeah.
instantly. And so that is huge. And one of the things to be conscious of when you are, like, let's say you are close to the limit, and most people don't realize that the next month they're going to charge interest on that. So even though you spent less than the credit limit, that interest might put you over your credit limit, and most people didn't take that into
Hmm.
consideration. And so you have to know what
Wow.
your APR is and know exactly how much they're going to charge. You have to have that buffer between what you're actually spending and your limit. That way it doesn't push you over your actual credit limit. So that's
Okay,
huge.
he said APR, your annual percentage rate.
Yes.
It makes, and you are really okay. You're really wise, knowledgeable about this subject matter, and it's we can attribute it to you paying attention because we know, like you said, life has happened to you and life has happened to me and so many other people. Shed some light on how do you bounce back. It's hard to bounce back when you've had those life situations that have tarnished your credit. And so we may be talking to people out there that may have, suffered a repossession, that may have had a foreclosure, filed bankruptcy, had, an illness, lost a job, and all of that. Let's give them some insight on how to recover from those things.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases is "this too shall pass." The
Yes,
nice part
absolutely.
about a credit score is it's not a stagnant number. It's a
Hmm.
dynamic number, meaning it always changes.
Yeah.
So even though you're down now, guess what? You can improve it. There's always time, God willing, to improve it, right?
Yes.
So the key is to learn responsibility, learn from
Hmm.
your past mistakes. Always say that there's a seed of opportunity in every problem. A lot of
Hmm.
times people look at problems and all they see is negativity. But when I see problems, I see them as opportunities, either opportunities to learn or opportunities to grow. But either
Right.
way, it's a seed of opportunity. And so no matter what your situation is, whether you have the best of score or the worst of score, guess
Hmm.
what? You have an opportunity to improve that. There's always
Yeah.
another day. So there's always hope. And so I've known people that have declared bankruptcy and now they
Yeah.
own their own business and they're multimillionaires. And so it's just
Absolutely.
like it's possible to go to the next level. So there's
Yeah.
always hope. And so that's the first thing I want to share. because a lot of
Yes.
times when people are in that type of situation, all they see is, oh, all these creditors are calling me, they're trying
Yeah.
to repossess my car, they're trying to put all these notes on my house to foreclose, and it can be stressful, and that's all you see, and that's all you think. And
Right.
I've heard of people literally committed suicide over that type of
Yes.
situation because they're so stressed
Absolutely.
out in the
Right.
moment. But there's always hope. It can always get better. It's always gonna. It could change, and so just learning from those situations and being more responsible in the future. Like if you have to cut up your credit cards, cut them up. Like if that's the
Hmm.
most responsible thing to do. If you have to
Yeah.
live off straight cash, one of the things too is your income.
Hmm.
Focus on ways to generate more income because if you have
Hmm.
more income coming in, you don't have to rely on your credit card.
Right.
And also, another key is saving up an emergency fund. That's huge. Save up at least 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund. That way, you don't have to tap into your credit card if you do need a tire or if you need a roof on your house or
Yeah.
whatnot. So it's just being proactive about future situations, knowing that life happens. It,
Yes.
one of my one of my agencies like, Darnold, when are all these problems gonna stop? I'm like, when you're dead.
I know.
As long as you're alive, something's gonna happen. Problem
Something is
happen.
gonna happen.
In Houston, we have
Exactly.
hurricanes.
Y-
It's gonna happen. It's a matter of
Yes.
when versus if. So it's a
Right.
matter of being proactive versus reactive and trying to get ahead of it. That way, you're not tapping into your credit cards. That way, you don't have to take out a loan for that next natural disaster, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
those are
Donald,
keys.
that's some really really good insight, and I love your sayings. You are a young wise man.
It's from experience, so experience is the best
And
teacher.
it is. It is the best teacher. But here's the thing about experience being a teacher. What you and I are doing, we are trying to make certain to kind of buffer that actual experience by trying to share knowledge where people can then say, oh, okay, maybe if I do this and not do that, I can save myself some hardships. So in our journey of trying to educate our community with financial literacy, we're trying to help you avoid some pitfalls. And so I'm grateful that that we have this platform to share these situations and stories, and bring on the best guests that we can, so that you can live vicariously through some experiences and not have to literally bump your head.
Absolutely. And if you have questions for the guests, it's a platform where you can actually type in the questions and get your questions answered. Because I know
Yeah.
a lot of times we go to these YouTube shows and they have a lot of great information, but you're like, what about this? What about that? What about this? What
Yeah,
about that? And you can't
exactly.
really
Hmm.
ask them. So
Right.
definitely tune in on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Like and subscribe to our YouTube station. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, you got one or two nuggets that will help you.
Yes, and follow us on our social media. I'm Michelle DeSel, the Wealth Tattletale. Please follow me on Instagram. Donald, tell them how to follow you.
Yes. So my personal one is Darnold Jr.'s, like you see down here.
Yeah.
And then we also have our social media for Finlit Live too. So we're on
Yes.
Snapchat, we're on Instagram. Um, I haven't been keeping up with the Twitter as much, but we do have a Twitter account. So definitely go to our social medias and check those out.
So
So
thanks,
we
guys.
appreciate
This has
you
been
guys
great.
for tuning in. I'm going to put the video for Kathy. If you haven't seen that one, she goes into a lot more details because she is the expert at credit scores. So if you
Yes.
haven't reached out to her and you need help with your credit, definitely reach out to Kathy. And we appreciate you guys for getting lit.